There are things in these northern woods that the maps don't show, and I've spent 23 years keeping one of those secrets locked inside my chest like a stone. My name is John, and I'm 55 years old now, but the man I was before that winter in 2003 died out there in the snow. What came back was someone who understood that the world is stranger and more terrible than any of us want to believe. I was a forest ranger back then, had been for almost 15 years. The Allagash Wilderness in northern Maine was my territory. Hundreds of thousands of acres of spruce and pine, frozen lakes, and silence so deep it felt like pressure against your eardrums. I loved it the way some men love the ocean or the desert. It was honest country. Hard but honest. You knew where you stood. I lived alone in a small cabin about 30 miles from the nearest town, a place called Ashland with a population that never crept above 1,300 souls. My wife had left me 6 years earlier, couldn't handle the isolation anymore, and I couldn't blame her. Some people are built for solitude and some aren't. I was built for it, or so I thought. Turns out there's a difference between being alone and being hunted. It was February when it started. The kind of February that makes you forget summer ever existed. Temperatures had been sitting at 20 below for 2 weeks straight, and the wind came down from Canada like it had a personal grudge. I was doing a backcountry patrol, checking on some remote cabins that ice fishermen used, making sure nobody had gotten themselves into trouble. It was a 3-day circuit on snowshoes, and I'd done it 100 times before. The first day was routine. Cold but clear. The sky was that deep blue you only get in winter, and the snow squeaked under my snowshoes like styrofoam. I made it to the first cabin by late afternoon, found it locked up tight and empty. I melted some snow for water, ate my freeze-dried dinner, and bedded down in my sleeping bag while the stove ticked and cooled in the darkness. That's when I heard it for the first time. It wasn't a howl, not exactly. It was something between a scream and a moan, distant but clear in the frozen air. It made the hair on the back of my neck stand straight up, made something ancient in my brain start screaming at me to run. I'd heard wolves before, heard mountain lions, heard every sound these woods could make. This was different. This was wrong. I told myself it was just the wind, or ice shifting on the lake, or a tree cracking in the cold. I told myself a lot of things that night while I lay in my sleeping bag, listening to that sound echo through the darkness. But I didn't believe any of them. The second day, I should have turned back. I know that now. But I'd never aborted a patrol before, and I wasn't about to start because of strange sounds in the night. Pride, stubbornness, professionalism, whatever you want to call it, it almost got me killed. I was about 8 miles from the second cabin when I found the tracks. They were massive, easily twice the size of any human footprint I'd ever seen. But they were human-shaped or close to it. Elongated, with what looked like claw marks at the end of each toe. They were deep in the snow, pressed down with a weight that must have been tremendous. And they were fresh, maybe an hour old, no more. The tracks came out of the deep woods and crossed my trail at an angle, heading northeast toward a frozen creek bed. I stood there for a long time, my breath forming clouds in the air, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Bears were hibernating. Moose didn't have feet like that. Nothing had feet like that. I should have turned back then. God knows I should have. But I followed those tracks instead, some part of me needing to know what had made them. I told myself I was being a good ranger investigating a potential threat. Really, I think I just couldn't accept what my gut was already screaming at me. I followed them for maybe half a mile before I realized they were circling back toward my own trail. And then I realized something worse. There was a second set of tracks, fresher than the first, and these were following me. That's when the fear really hit, cold and sharp as a knife between my ribs. I was being stalked. I turned around fast, brought my rifle up to my shoulder, scanning the tree line. Nothing moved. The forest was absolutely still, the kind of stillness that comes right before something terrible happens. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. And then I saw it, maybe 60 yards away, standing between 2 massive pines like a shadow that had learned to stand upright. I've tried to describe what I saw that day to exactly 3 people in my life, and every time, the words come out wrong. Language isn't built for things like this. But I'll try again now, because this is the only chance I'll get to tell the truth before I'm too old to remember it clearly. It was tall, 8 feet, maybe 9. Skeletal thin, but you could see the terrible strength in its frame, the way a dead tree still stands through hurricanes. Its skin was gray-white, stretched tight over bones that jutted out at angles that made your eyes hurt to follow. The head was wrong, all wrong. Elongated like a deer's skull but with a human shape underneath, and antlers, massive twisted antlers that branched out like lightning frozen in bone. But the worst part, the part that still wakes me up some nights, was the eyes. They were human eyes. Desperate, starving, aware human eyes trapped in that terrible body, looking at me with something between hunger and pleading. It took a step toward me, and I heard its joints crack like breaking branches. My finger was on the trigger, but I couldn't shoot. Not because I was brave, but because I was too terrified to move. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to run, but my body had forgotten how. The Wendigo opened its mouth, and the sound that came out was the same one I'd heard the night before, that terrible keening wail. This close, I could hear the human voice underneath it, stretched and broken but still there, still trying to form words it no longer remembered. Then it charged. I don't remember making the decision to run. My body just did it, some survival instinct kicking in before my conscious mind could catch up. I ran through the snow like it wasn't there, adrenaline turning me into something more than human for those few minutes. Behind me, I could hear it crashing through the forest, impossibly fast for something that looked so skeletal. I ran for my life through terrain I knew by heart, cutting between trees, jumping over fallen logs, using every trick I'd learned in 15 years of walking these woods. But it was faster. Always faster. I could hear it getting closer, could hear its breathing, wet, rattling, desperate. I burst out of the tree line onto a frozen lake and immediately knew I'd made a mistake. No cover, nowhere to hide. But it was too late to turn back. I ran out onto the ice, my snowshoes giving me some purchase on the slippery surface, praying the ice was thick enough to hold us both. Halfway across the lake, I risked a glance back. The Wendigo had stopped at the tree line, pacing back and forth like a wolf at a fence line, making that awful sound. It didn't want to come out onto the open ice. Why? Fear of falling through? Some territorial boundary? I didn't know and didn't care. I just kept running. I made it to the far shore and plunged back into the forest, putting distance between me and that thing, not stopping until my lungs were burning and my legs were shaking so bad I could barely stand. I found a thick stand of spruce trees and crawled into the center, making myself as small and hidden as possible. That's where I spent the night, shivering in my sleeping bag, my rifle across my chest, listening to it searching for me in the darkness. Sometimes close, sometimes distant, but always there. Always hunting. I knew I couldn't make it back to my cabin. It was too far, and I was too exhausted. My only chance was to make it to the second patrol cabin, about 4 miles northeast. If I could barricade myself inside, maybe I could last until morning, maybe even call for help on my emergency radio if I was lucky. When dawn came, gray and cold, I started moving again. Slowly, carefully, trying to leave as little trail as possible. Every shadow looked like that thing. Every sound made me freeze and bring my rifle up. I was about a mile from the cabin when I heard the gunshot. It was a heavy rifle, probably a .308 or bigger, and it came from the direction I was heading. Then another shot and another. Someone was shooting at something and I had a pretty good idea what. I moved toward the sound, staying in cover, my own rifle ready. That's when I saw him for the first time. The FBI agent who would save my life and change everything I thought I knew about the world. He was standing in a small clearing, tall and solid in a black tactical jacket, firing methodically at something I couldn't see yet. His movements were professional, calm, like this was just another day at the office. When his magazine ran dry, he reloaded without taking his eyes off his target, smooth as silk. Then the Wendigo came into view, and I understood why he wasn't running. It was wounded, dragging one leg, black blood, actual black blood, staining the snow behind it. But it was still coming, still trying to reach him with those terrible clawed hands. The agent fired 3 more shots, center mass, and the thing finally went down. It thrashed in the snow for a moment, making sounds that were almost words, almost human, and then it was still. The agent stood there for a long moment, just watching it, his rifle still shouldered. Then he spoke without turning around. "You can come out now, Ranger. It's dead." My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped my rifle. "How did you know you were there?" He finally turned to look at me, and I saw his face for the first time. Late 30s, maybe 40. Hard eyes that had seen things but not unkind. "Because I've been tracking you for 2 days, trying to get between you and that thing before it caught up with you. I'm Agent Marcus Webb, FBI. And we need to talk." Agent Webb made me sit down in the snow before I fell down. My legs had finally given out, all that adrenaline draining away and leaving me hollow and shaking. He pulled a thermos from his pack and poured me coffee that was still hot, sweet with sugar. I held it with both hands and tried not to look at the dead Wendigo 10 yards away. "How long have you known about these things?" I finally managed to ask. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, thin and distant. Webb sat down across from me, his rifle laid carefully across his knees. "Officially, the Bureau doesn't know about them at all. Officially, I'm investigating a series of missing persons cases in the northern wilderness," which is true enough. Unofficially, he looked at the dead creature. "I've been hunting them for 6 years." 6 years, I repeated numbly. "How many are there?" "In North America. We think maybe 30, 40. Hard to say. They're solitary, territorial. This one's range probably covered about 500 square miles. Your bad luck it was hunting during your patrol." I took a sip of coffee, felt it burn down my throat. "What is it? I mean, really?" Webb was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "You familiar with the Algonquian legends? The Wendigo spirit, the curse of cannibalism? Most of it's folklore, but the core is true. These things were human once. Still are, in a way. They were people who got lost in the wilderness, starving, and crossed a line that shouldn't be crossed. Ate human flesh. And something happened to them. Changed them. That's impossible. You just saw it. Is it really impossible, or is it just something we don't understand yet?" He stood up, walked over to the body. I forced myself to follow him. Up close, it was even worse. I could see the remnants of humanity in its face, the structure underneath the deformity. The antlers weren't really antlers, I realized now. They were bones, grown out of its skull in twisted formations. Its fingers were too long, tipped with black claws that looked sharp as knives. "It's not magic," Webb said, like he could read my thoughts. "It's biology. Something in the act of cannibalism, combined with extreme starvation and psychological trauma, triggers a change. A disease, maybe, or a parasite. We don't know yet. The government has been trying to study them for decades, ever since the first documented case in 1893. The government knows? I felt anger rising through the shock. Why hasn't anyone warned people? Why hasn't? Because we can't prove it, Webb cut me off. And because the moment we go public with this, we have mass panic, copycat cases, and people hunting in the woods for monsters they don't understand. It's better to handle it quietly. That's where people like me come in." He pulled out a camera and started taking photographs of the body. Clinical. Professional. I had to turn away. "Listen, John," he said, and I realized I'd never told him my name. He'd known exactly who I was from the start. "What you saw, what you've been through, it's going to change you. I know that. I've been there. But you have a choice now. You can walk away, go back to your life, and try to forget this ever happened. Or you can help me." "Help you do what?" "Hunt them. Track them. Keep people safe." He finished with the camera and started preparing something from his pack. I realized it was thermite charges. He was going to burn the body. There are more of these things out here, and they're getting bolder. This one killed at least 4 people over the last 2 years. Hikers, hunters, people just trying to enjoy the wilderness. Someone has to stop them, and there aren't enough of us who know what we're looking for. I watched him work, my mind spinning. 24 hours ago, I'd been a normal forest ranger with a normal life. Now I was standing next to a monster's corpse while an FBI agent recruited me for a secret war I didn't know existed. Why me? I asked. Because you survived. Because you know these woods better than anyone. Because you've seen one now, and that changes everything. He looked at me straight on. And because I think you're the kind of man who can't walk away from this. Am I wrong? I thought about going back to my cabin, trying to pretend none of this had happened. Thought about hikers and fishermen coming into my woods, not knowing what might be watching them from the trees. Thought about that desperate human look in the Wendigo's eyes. No, I said quietly. You're not wrong. Webb nodded like he'd expected that answer. Good. Then let's burn this thing and get you somewhere warm. You're hypothermic, even if you don't feel it yet. After that, I'll teach you everything I know. We burned the Wendigo's body on that frozen lake shore, watched it turn to ash and smoke that rose straight up in the still air. Webb said the words I'd say over a dozen more bodies in the years to come. Rest now. Your hunger is over. Then he helped me to the patrol cabin, where I finally collapsed. When I woke up 12 hours later, he'd made food, contacted my supervisor with a cover story about finding me injured, and had a stack of files spread out on the table. Files full of missing persons reports, photographs, maps marked with sightings and kills. Welcome to the real wilderness, John, he said, and pushed the first file toward me. Let me show you what you've been walking through all these years without knowing it. That was the beginning. That was the moment my old life ended and this new, stranger one began. For the next 3 years, I lived 2 lives. Officially, I was still just John, the forest ranger, doing my patrols and filing my reports. Unofficially, I was Agent Webb's eyes and ears in the Allagash wilderness, tracking signs that no one else knew to look for. Webb taught me everything. How to read the territory markers Wendigos left, scratches high on trees, deer carcasses arranged in specific patterns, areas where all animal life suddenly went silent. How to distinguish their tracks from bear or moose, even in partial snow cover. How to recognize the early stages of transformation in missing persons cases. The timeline, the warning signs, the point of no return. Most importantly, he taught me that these things weren't just monsters. They were tragedies. Every Wendigo was a person once, he told me one night, sitting in my cabin while rain hammered the roof. Had families, lives, dreams. Then they got lost, got desperate, and made a choice that destroyed them. Our job isn't just to hunt them. It's to end their suffering. We found 3 more that first year. One in northern Vermont, an old woman who'd been lost for 42 days back in the 80s and had been living as a Wendigo for almost 20 years. One in the boundary waters of Minnesota, a man who'd survived a plane crash by eating his co-pilot. And one right there in Maine, less than 60 miles from my cabin, a teenager who'd run away from home and gotten caught in a blizzard. The teenager was the hardest. He still looked partially human, the transformation not fully complete. When we cornered him in a cave system, he tried to speak, tried to beg us not to kill him. But his body was already too far gone, already craving the flesh that would complete his transformation. Webb put him down with a single shot, clean and quick, and I saw tears on his face when he did it. This never gets easier, he said. The day it does is the day I quit. During those years, Webb became more than just my handler. He became my friend, maybe my best friend. He understood what this knowledge did to you, how it changed the way you looked at the world. We'd spend long nights talking about philosophy, about the nature of humanity, about whether what we were doing actually mattered in the grand scheme of things. We're not heroes, he said once. We're just janitors, cleaning up the messes that slip through the cracks of normal reality. But maybe that's important too. He told me about his own first encounter, 12 years before we met. He'd been a regular FBI agent, investigating a serial killer in Montana, when he'd stumbled onto something that wasn't human anymore. His partner had died in that encounter. Webb had barely survived. It had taken him 2 years to find someone in the government who believed him, who could connect him with the others who knew. There's maybe 50 of us, he said, spread across the entire country. FBI, Park Service, Forest Service, a few independent contractors. All keeping the same secret, all doing the same impossible job. We call ourselves the Quiet Rangers." He smiled at the name, but there was sadness in it. Because nobody will ever know what we do. I asked him once if he regretted it. Regretted knowing, regretted the burden. "Every single day," he said without hesitation. "But I regret the alternative more." In the spring of 2006, something changed. Webb showed up at my cabin unannounced, and I could tell immediately something was wrong. He looked exhausted, older than his years, and he carried a different kind of tension in his shoulders. "We have a problem," he said. "A big one." He spread out a map of the northeastern United States, marked with pins in red and blue. Red pins for confirmed Wendigo territories, blue pins for suspected ones. There were dozens of them, far more than the 30 or 40 he'd originally told me about. "They're multiplying," Webb said quietly. "Or rather, we've been undercounting them. Satellite thermal imaging, new tracking software. We're finding more all the time. And they're moving, expanding their territories. Something's changing and we don't know what. What does that mean for us?" "It means we're losing." He sat down heavily, rubbed his face with both hands. "There aren't enough of us, John. We kill 2, 3 more appear somewhere else. It's not sustainable." Over the next few months, the situation deteriorated. Webb was called away more and more often, sometimes for weeks at a time. When he came back, he looked worse each time. More haunted, more worn down. He told me about a family of hikers in Wyoming, about a hunting party in Alaska, about a small town in Quebec where something had gotten into the outlying farms. "I can't save them all," he said one night, drunk for the first time I'd ever seen him. "There's too many of them and not enough of me." I felt helpless. I was doing what I could in my territory, keeping my woods safe, but it was a drop in an ocean of horror. The weight of knowing, of seeing the scope of the problem, was crushing. Then came November 2007 and everything fell apart. Webb was tracking a particularly aggressive Wendigo in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Multiple kills, getting bolder, hunting closer to populated areas. He went in alone because that's how we always worked. One tracker, one hunter, minimal exposure. But this time something went wrong. I got the call 3 days later. Webb was in a hospital in Portland, barely alive. I drove down that night, breaking every speed limit. The hospital corridors were too bright, too clean, too far removed from the reality Webb and I had been living in. I found him in intensive care, unconscious, hooked up to machines that beeped and hummed. His left arm was gone from the elbow down. His face was covered in stitches. He looked small in that hospital bed, fragile in a way I'd never associated with him. The nurse told me he'd been found by hunters, hypothermic and bleeding out in the snow. The official story was a bear attack. The truth was sitting in the small notebook on his bedside table, written in shaky handwriting during his conscious moments. Got careless. Got caught. Lucky to be alive. I sat with him for 3 days while he drifted in and out of consciousness. When he finally woke up properly, the first thing he said was, "Did they get it?" "Other agents tracked it down," I told him. "It's done." He nodded, then looked at his missing arm and laughed bitterly. "Well, that's the end of my field work." "Webb." "Don't," he cut me off. "We both know it's true. I can't track, can't shoot properly, can't survive in the backcountry like this. I'm out." He looked at me with those hard, tired eyes. "But you're not. You're still out there." Over the next weeks, as he recovered, Webb started training me differently. Not just how to track and survive, but how to coordinate, how to work with the other Quiet Rangers, how to access the government databases that track potential cases. He was preparing me to continue without him. "This is bigger than both of us," he said. "Bigger than any one person. The work continues, even when we can't." He was transferred to a desk job, coordinating Quiet Rangers from an office in Washington, D.C. We stayed in touch, talked once a week, but it wasn't the same. The field work fell to others, to me, to new recruits who had their own encounters and chose to fight rather than forget. I kept patrolling my woods, kept watching for signs. Found 2 more Wendigos over the next decade, put them down as humanely as I could, said the words Webb had taught me. Trained 3 new rangers in what to look for, how to stay safe, how to bear the weight of knowing. The work never ended. It never got easier. But it mattered. Webb called me 2 months ago. He's retiring, finally, after 25 years of carrying this secret. His voice sounded relieved and sad in equal measure. "Someone else's turn now," he said. "I've done my part." "More than your part," I told him. "So have you, John. So have you. I'm 55 now, and I've been doing this for 21 years. My body is starting to fail me. Knees that ache in the cold, a back that doesn't bend like it used to. I know my time in the field is coming to an end too. But I've trained others, passed on what Webb taught me, ensured the work continues. Sometimes, when I'm out on patrol in these woods I've walked for almost 4 decades, I think about that first Wendigo. About the human eyes looking out from that terrible face. About all the people who got lost, got desperate, crossed a line they never should have crossed. About the fine edge we all walk between civilization and savagery, between humanity and hunger. I think about the families who never got closure, who never knew what really happened to their loved ones. About the secret we keep, the quiet work we do, the monsters we hunt that no one else believes in. And I think about Webb, sitting in his office in D.C., coordinating operations he can no longer participate in directly, still fighting the same fight with different tools. The world is stranger than people know. There are thin places in the wilderness where the rules change, where hunger can transform you into something that haunts the spaces between the trees. Most people will never know that, and that's probably for the best. But some of us have to know. Some of us have to stand watch in those thin places, to track what lurks there, to end suffering when we find it. We do it quietly, without recognition, without thanks. We do it because someone has to, and because we've seen what happens when no one does. The work continues. It always will. As long as there are wild places, as long as people get lost and desperate, as long as the hunger exists, there will be a need for people willing to hunt in the darkness, to face the impossible, to carry secrets that would break most minds. I'm getting old now. My time is almost done. But others will take my place, just as I took Webb's. The quiet rangers will endure, generation after generation, keeping watch over the spaces where humanity ends and something else begins. That's the truth I've carried for 21 years. That's the secret I'll take to my grave, even as I pass the work to younger hands. And on cold winter nights, when the wind comes down from Canada and the forest goes silent, I still listen for that sound. That terrible keening between a scream and a moan, and I'm grateful that I know what it means, and that I'm still here to do something about it. Some burdens are worth carrying. Some secrets are worth keeping. Some fights are worth fighting, even if no one will ever know you fought them. This was mine. This is my confession. This is the truth about what walks in these northern woods, and about the man who saved me from becoming one of them. The Wendigos are real. And so are we, the ones who hunt them. That's all I have to say.